Qui-Gon,
Master.
I heard of your report to the Council. Tell me about this mysterious attacker on Tatooine. Sith Lord is not to be trifled with, and I will not be there to protect you.
In Attack of the Clones, Obi-Wan Kenobi is found snooping around Geonosis and is promptly captured. Within his holding cell, Count Dooku pays him a visit, putting on a facade of cordiality. The conversation then ensues, and tells us that this is the first time that the two have properly met. As they go on, Dooku mentions that he would have wished that Qui-Gon was still alive, as he could really use his help in this moment. Obi-Wan snaps back, vehemently insisting that Qui-Gon would never join Dooku or the Sith. To which Dooku reminds Kenobi that Qui-Gon was once his own pupil. This does actually raise an interesting question in the lore. Would Qui-Gon Jinn have joined Count Dooku and turned to the dark side? And would he have followed his master down this path? This is of course assuming that Dooku would have still left the Jedi Order if Qui-Gon Jinn hadn't been killed, as this was the catalyst for him leaving. But would he have managed to take his apprentice with him? Well, my friends, this is an interesting conversation to have, so let's dive into it. Going back to the conversation Dooku was having with Obi-Wan on Geonosis, he tells the Jedi Knight that he believes that Qui-Gon would have joined him if he had learned the truth. That being that the Senate and the Galactic Republic was under the control of a Sith Lord. And although everyone's first reaction would be no, and that Qui-Gon Jinn would have never joined Dooku, there is a short possibility, and a slight one, that Dooku may have been correct on this. And not only has he known Qui-Gon since he was a boy, but Dooku watched as he began to form his own opinions about the Jedi Council and about the Republic. Qui-Gon was known as a contrarian and a renegade Jedi, as he constantly butted heads with the High Council, especially Grandmaster Yoda. We know that Qui-Gon had a very different way of going about Jedi business. He had no qualms with gambling, stealing ships or speeders, or even taking hostages in some cases. I would like to point out that it was never innocent hostages, but hostages nonetheless. Qui-Gon did as his mission was directed, but never felt compelled to follow the Jedi code to the letter, and even got annoyed whenever his methods were questioned. This is often why he and Obi-Wan Kenobi came into conflict with one another. We learn in the canon novel Master and Apprentice that Master Qui-Gon and his Padawan very rarely saw eye to eye, with Obi-Wan wanting to stay strictly to protocol and the Jedi code. Their strained relationship does eventually get a lot better, but for a great amount of time Qui-Gon's tendency to be a loose cannon directly clashed with Obi-Wan's rigid adherence to the Jedi way. In fact, the two's relationship echoed that of how we saw Master Dooku and Mace Windu interact in Tales of the Jedi, in the episode entitled Choices. The likelihood of Qui-Gon joining Dooku is at a reasonable level, especially when we understand how Qui-Gon firmly believes in doing the right thing, regardless of who says what about it. There was even a moment of time in the comics where Qui-Gon came dangerously close to the dark side after his lover was mortally wounded on a mission. However, the biggest wrench in all of this is the fact that Qui-Gon only does things because he follows the will of the Force and nothing else. This is the road stop that pretty much puts an end to all notions that Qui-Gon would ever join the dark side or Dooku. You see, it was Qui-Gon who believed Anakin was the chosen one because he adhered to the prophecies and the Force itself, and believed that Anakin would destroy the Sith and bring balance to the Force. It was Qui-Gon who once destroyed a sleeping creature, simply because it was born of the dark side, and he felt compelled by the will of the Force to do so. Qui-Gon had a massive heart that went out to everyone that came across him, and it pained him when he learned of the Padawan Ral Avaros had been turned to the dark side by a slicer dart that made her lose her mind. Qui-Gon was incredibly weary of the dark side of the Force, far more than Dooku was, who held a natural obsession with it. And there were many lines that Dooku often jumped over that Qui-Gon Jinn would not cross, in an effort to remain completely aligned with the light side. Qui-Gon Jinn was a servant of the light side of the Force, not the Jedi. If Qui-Gon had any darkness in his heart, then he would never finish the test given to him by the Force priestesses that turned him into a Force spirit, the very same test that Yoda had to go through at the Wellspring of Midichlorians, and a test that Dooku would not have been able to pass. Qui-Gon indeed was a Grey Jedi, as he was a maverick of the Order who usually shot first and asked questions later, but always with a purpose. Qui-Gon had a certain wisdom in his spontaneity that took Obi-Wan years to finally understand, much less learn. It is only by allying himself with the will of the Force in the very moment does the Force gift him with insight and a solution to any current predicament. Because of this wisdom, he had a view on the galaxy that, yes, was outside of the dogmatic view of the Jedi, but far from the view of the Sith. Had Qui-Gon been told by Dooku that the Senate was being controlled by the Sith, I'm certain that he would have believed him and left the order immediately, but upon learning that Dooku himself was actually allying himself with that said Sith Lord, there is absolutely no way that Qui-Gon would have gone with him. If he failed in talking Dooku out of the arrangement, then I believe he possibly would have taken the matter to the Council before getting out of Dodge and resigning as a Jedi. Qui-Gon would then likely leave the Order, but then take matters into his own hands and build up a plan to possibly help stop the Sith with his newfound knowledge, and the newfound knowledge that Anakin was the Chosen One. Dooku clearly trusts Qui-Gon's judgment too, so if he saw that Qui-Gon had thought that Dooku had abandoned reasons for madness, then it is very highly possible that Dooku would have snapped back to his senses. And with Qui-Gon Jinn simultaneously being the perfect master to train Anakin in the ways of a light side wielder, is also likely the only individual that could have turned Dooku back to the light as well. Perhaps Dooku was too deep with Sidious to turn back now, and maybe he would have reached out to Qui-Gon, and the two of them would have come up with a plan to destroy the Sith together. Though if we followed this string into speculation territory, I highly doubt that they would be a success, as Sidious covered his bases far too well to allow himself to be betrayed. Not to mention, he had eyes on Dooku basically 24/7. As at the time of the Phantom Menace, it is Dooku who is Sidious's greatest threat. It would require the help of the Jedi Order and the training of the Chosen One to take down Sidious, and if Qui-Gon lives, then Anakin would undoubtedly follow him wherever he goes. Palpatine would never be able to fill that father role, which was now taken by Qui-Gon. Perhaps Dooku and Qui-Gon together raise the young Chosen One, and then lead an undercover offense against the Sith in the middle of the Clone War. A new order, different from the Jedi, and far different from the Sith. Anyway, my friends, all future speculations aside, I do believe that Qui-Gon would want to join Dooku, but he would never turn to the dark side. But do you agree with this analysis? Do you agree with our analysis? And do you think that Qui-Gon would remain rooted in the light side? Or do you think he would follow his master into darkness? Discuss with us in the comments down below. And as always, my friends, may the Force be with you, and have a great day.